So in this session, I will be talking more about the roadmap to becoming a full stack developer. And here we have a set of concepts that I'm going to explain. So first one is, what is web development and how does a website work? So web development is basically the creation of a website or a web application, and it is also the creation of files that are connected together in order to give you a beautiful website or application. So how does a website work? In this diagram, I'm going to explain how a website works, but before I do, after creating a website or a web application, it is necessary that you host your web application or website in a hosting server, such as this, something like this. So a hosting server is where um, files related to a particular website is stored. So this hosting server houses all the files related to different websites. So now, how does a website work really? Let's say we have a user here, and this user is trying to navigate to this domain name, which is anibo.com. First of all, the user inputs the domain name into a search box in our browser, and our browser needs to send a request to a server called DNS, which stands for domain name system. So this DNS helps us to retrieve the IP address, or helps us to locate the IP address associated with this domain name. So after retrieving or locating this IP address, a response is going to be sent back to our browser, and our browser now does a second request to the server, or rather to the hosting server where these files are located. So the reason why we need an IP address is because in a particular hosting server, we have a lot of websites, we have a lot of files. So we need to give these websites or files an identity. So, and that is what the IP address is all about. So when our browser sends a second request to a different server this time around, which is the hosting server, the IP address is sent along with this request. So this IP address helps us to locate or retrieve all the files related to a particular website, such as this. Yes, such as this. So now, after locating the files, these files will now be sent back to us in a request form, and it includes oh yes. So this hosting server sends back a response, including the files that are related to this website. So for example, let's say I want to make research. Let's say I'm looking for a particular website called AmuServe. Okay, so right now, clicking on AmuServe, a lot of things have happened. I've sent a request to a DNS, which gave me back an IP address. Now my browser now sends a second request to the hosting server. Right now I don't know what hosting server this website is using, but a request has been sent to that hosting server, and the hosting server has given us a response, including the files. So this website you're seeing is just a bunch of files that are connected together to give us something as beautiful as this. So in this particular website, we have the HTML files, we have the CSS files, and we also have the JavaScript files. So as you can see, the CSS is majorly for the design of your website or web application, while the HTML, it just gives you the structure of your website or application, and JavaScript gives us some behavior, like when I click on this particular thing, now something happens like this. When I click on this, something happens. So this is the work of the JavaScript. So that's that with the first question. The second question is all about the difference between a website and a web application. So this is a good example of a website. a website only shows content or information related to a particular business or a particular website, or let's say a particular location or a particular thing, whatever it is. So now here, this is a website. As you can see, I can scroll to read about this company. I won't be telling you anything about this though. Okay, so just calling and checking out things about this particular business, this particular company, the services they render, you making research and all that. So this is a good example of a website, and in this website you can as well, you can toggle things to check for other pages. Now clicking on this, I'll be going to the purpose, cost, passion, niche and all that, and clicking on services. We have professional services, and we have all of this, and so I'll be gisting you about this later. Okay, that's that about a website. A website is less interactive. You majorly or basically just view things in a website, but the Gmail is a good example of a web application, and that's because there are a lot of things a user can do. You can interact more with a web application compared to a website. So now, for example, let's say I want to filter all the dribble emails instead of having everything. So all I need to do is type in dribble, and in here I have all the dribble emails, right? All the dribble mails. So as you can see, I've just filtered by searching for dribble and I have my result. So I'm interacting with this web application right now, and I can as well filter by saying okay, this is from the time, let's say older than a week. Okay, I've filtered older than a week. As you can see, this is a date. This is a date here, as attachments and all that. So for example, I'm just going to take this out. Let me do something else apart from just filtering. I can as well compose. So clicking on compose button, I can provide a recipient address, email address, the subject, and the information I want to send to that person. And this is me interacting with a web application. So another thing is, for example, let's say look at this start. I only have Google here. So if I come here and click on this and go back to start, as you can see, I'm interacting with this web application. So this is majorly the difference between a website and a web application. Okay, so the next one is the difference between a server and a client. So like we saw, like we've seen in the how does a website work. I'm also going to make reference back to this, but instead of this I'm just going to go here. So here, this is the difference between a client and a server. Now I'm going to explain. So this is the client and this is a server. So your PC, your desktop, your phone, they are all clients. The browser in them are clients. So we through our browser we are able to connect to the internet, right? And without a server, I don't think there will be a reason for us connecting to the internet, because we need to fetch information, we need to fetch data from somewhere. So this server is where those data are being stored. So whenever a user navigates to a particular URL or clicks on a particular button to render a new page, the pages or rather the files for that particular website or web application will be retrieved from a server here, from from this server. So this server houses or contains all the files related to a particular website. So when a user sends a request, just as I explained earlier, we get those files from a server, and the server sends back a response containing those files back to our browser, so that we can view or interact with a website, sorry, with a web application, or just view a website. So that's majorly the difference between the client and the server. So now the next one is text editor. So what is a text editor? A text editor is actually a tool that helps us to create websites and web application. And we also have IDLE, which stands for Integrated Development and Learning Environment. So they are interchangeably the same. And so here we have the examples. We have the VS Code, we have the Notepad, we have Atom. We all have VS Code on our system, sorry, Notepad on our system. So I'm going to search for Notepad, and I'm going to click on this guy here. So Notepad. So this is a Notepad. So now this Notepad, I'm going to create a simple website that says hello world. So here I'm going to have body, and that's a body tag, and I'll be explaining that when we start learning HTML. So in here I'm going to have an H1 that says hello Deji, how are you doing today? Okay, so in here I'm just going to close this with my H1 closing tag, and I'm going to save this and give it an extension. Okay, now as you can see here, this is a text file, but I'm going to change this to an HTML file by just saying hello.html and save this guy here. So after saving this guy, I can now view this guy in my browser. So I'm just going to locate where this file is located. I think this is it. Yeah, this is it. So when I click on this guy, guess what happens? Wow. So this is a simple file, this an HTML file that says hello Deji, how are you doing today? So this is the Notepad is actually the simplest text editor in building a web application or a website. So but we have more sophisticated text editors such as VS Code. Those are very big. VS stands for Virtual Studio. Here we have code. So VS Code. So this is VS Code, and I already have this on my PC, and I'll be showing you guys how to set yours as well soon in the next video. So this is what a VS Code looks like, and I'm going to show you the one I have on my PC. I guess I've already opened it. So this is my VS Code on my PC, and this is my file. I'm having a backend. I'm currently working on a project right now. So I have the backend service, I have the front end service. As you can see, I'm connecting these two together in order to give me a web application. So this is what a VS Code looks like, and I'll be showing you how everything works. So that's about the text editor now. So now for the front end development. So the front end development is more talks more about how your website looks. We're talking about the content of your website, the structure of your website. We're talking about the styling of your website, the behavior of your website or web application. So the HTML file gives HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language, is actually the markup language file that gives our website a structure. So let's say you're building a house now. You need to give it a structure. You need to honestly, I don't know what those guys do, but HTML is more like giving a website a structure. So the CSS file is you giving your website or your web application some styling, giving it a color, giving it some animation, giving it different font size and font width and all of those things. We'll be seeing this when we start the actual tutorial for these guys here. So, and JavaScript is more of giving your website or web application a form of interaction, behaviors, things like that. For example, let's say I click on a particular button, then the button takes me to another page, or the button pops up a dialog box, things like that. So that's the work of the files or the tools used in the front end. We have React as well. React is just a library. It's more advanced, and it's an interesting tool to use. That is what I'm currently using right now. So that's that about the front end. So let's talk about the back end. So the back end is more about the programming language you use in building your web application. So it talks about the framework you use. It talks about the database associated with this web application, and it has to do with configuring your application in the back end. So there are things you can't see. There are a lot of logic, a lot of functions happening on the back end that you can see. So that's what the back end development is all about. And we make use of programming language such as Python, PHP, Java, and a lot of them. Even JavaScript is also a back-end language. We have Node, and we have database such as the SQL, we have the MongoDB, we have the Postgres, we have the MySQL, and a lot of them like that. So that is more. This is just a brief explanation on what the backend development is all about. So for other tools, we have the version control system, we have the Git and GitHub, which are the examples here, and we also have other ones like Bitbucket and other. So for the GitHub now, I'm just going to show you what a GitHub is all about, or how it looks. So this is a GitHub page, and a GitHub is just a registry where you store your files, your web application files, where you store them. And this GitHub helps us to track the changes we make to these files. So, but the difference between Git and GitHub is that Git is actually the tool that tracks the changes you've made to a particular file while building a web application, while GitHub stores those files for you, and GitHub does some other interesting things. So I'm just giving a brief explanation on what these things do. When we get there, I'm going to elaborate more, and then you can learn more about them. So we have frameworks as well. Frameworks are things, or they are tools that have been pre-built by sophisticated, more experienced developers, and they help us to avoid building things from scratch. For example, CSS. I love building CSS from scratch because it helps me to learn more about CSS. But most of the time, let's say you have a project you need to quickly work on. So instead of building CSS from scratch, there are a lot of components you can pick from frameworks such as Bootstraps, Material UI, and a lot of them. So you pick them and you use them just like a drag and drop and all that. So you pick them and you use them in your website. So it makes building your website faster. And so that is all about the framework. And I hope you guys enjoyed this session, and I really appreciate the time spent. Thank you very much for watching, like and subscribe by clicking the subscribe button below. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Yeah.